Some brands offer you low finance, or cashback, or servicing.
Renault don't do ors. We do ands. The Renault Kadjar with 1.91% APR and €1,000 cashback and 3 years servicing, saving you thousands. Renault, the brand with the ands. Visit your local Renault dealer. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required. Subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are the podcast you're looking for. This is...
Hello, everybody. It's Dan Z, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi's The Last Jedi spoiler-filled review show. We have an amazing 2-hour conversation. It's much longer than what we usually do, but this is a very special thing. It's the new Star Wars film, and we have Cory Clubb, Tom Gross, Aaron Harris, Matt Moore, Randy Therio, and myself on. Unfortunately, the rest of our Coffee with Kenobi family was not able to join us because there are a lot of us, and it's hard to find the time, so we did the best we could. So people that won't be joining us today are Luke Siders, Jeff McGee, Amy Ratcliffe, Dr. Andrea Letamendi, Nick Deco, and Jason Brame. But they all send their very best, and we even have a couple of MP3s at the end from some of our hosts where they share their thoughts on The Last Jedi with you. So without further ado, here is our conversation. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us here on Coffee with Kenobi. It's time for our The Last Jedi review, and we've got an all-star cast of amazing Star Wars fans and people. I'm going to introduce, in alphabetical order, Mr. Cory Clubb, the co-founder of Coffee with Kenobi.
Hey, welcome back. Thanks.
Welcome back. Yes, are you welcoming me back to you? Or
I'm welcoming you back to me. Yeah, I'm glad
interesting.
I don't know.
He's still got his charm, ladies and
Things are
gentlemen.
changing weird tonight, so yeah.
Also joining us is our CWK newsman, an all-around dapper fellow, Mr. Tom Gross.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
Attaboy. Following that, we have Mr. Aaron Harris, the host of Rebels Reactions.
Hey, Dan. Hey, everybody. How y'all doing?
Doing great, sir. Good to hear you.
That's good to be heard. It's kind of rough not being heard during this in-between season break. So
we could easily take a 10-minute interlude and talk about Hera's appearance in the future Dr. Aphra comic, but maybe that will come up later. That's pretty exciting stuff. And speaking of
today,
comics, oh yes, it's I found out because of the guy who is the best in the business, Mr. Matt Moore of Comics with Kenobi.
Hello, everybody. How are you all?
We are fantastic. Very excited to talk with all of you about The Last Jedi. And rounding out our all-star cast is Randy Therio of Legends Library.
Hey, guys. Good to see you. Good to hear you from you anyway. Welcome back, me, or whatever.
Cory was the only one who made it on.
I know. I dust off my headset here, so.
That's okay. So here, of course, this is probably a given, but I want to make sure I state it very clearly, especially considering the mission of our show. But this is going to be chock full of spoilers. We are under the assumption that if you're listening to this, because we've had 2 review shows in a row that were not spoilers, but now everything is on the table. We're assuming you've seen it. We're assuming you've thought about it, and we look forward to really breaking this thing down because, my goodness, there is a lot to talk about. And the way we're going to do this to make sure everybody gets a chance, because we've got a lot of great things to say, that we're going to just have, I asked everyone to come up with 5 major topics that they'd like to bring up. And Cory, let's start with your first one. I don't really have these in any order, by the way. It's not like number 1 is better than 5. They're just the ones that came to my head. But whatever you guys do is great.
Yeah, sure enough. So my first one is a typical one, which is no spoiler around here, but the return of Luke Skywalker in the film itself, all around. For my point, I think Mark Hamill did an incredible job in his performance here. Of course, seeing Luke again on the screen was great, and just him all around. I think he did a great job of being that curmudgeon Master Jedi that's a little crazy, a little smart. And just coming through, really punching through the film itself, and just having a great presence and a great role in this film all the way around. I think it was just incredible to see him on the screen and see Luke again in the series.
Oh, yeah, Mark Hamill. I mean, I'm biased. We're all biased when it comes to Luke, but I really think that this is an Oscar-worthy nomination. And Christian Blauvelt, I saw him on Twitter. He was mentioning that as well. I mean, we're definitely all going to talk about Luke a lot. Tom, what's your first one?
Oh man, there's so much to talk about, but I'm just gonna, because this has been a conversation around my house, and I'm sure anyone who's listened to our immediate reaction last Thursday knows that my daughter was with me at that opening show last Thursday night, and so I just have to bring this one up and get it off the table. I got to talk about porgs, because that is all my daughter and I
Thanks, guys. It was fun.
That is all we have talked about over the entire last week, and we have rehashed the scene where Chewbacca apparently, lets his stomach do the talking and roasts up a porg, and I think we all wanted to see that, and so what we have talked about is, why didn't he just eat it? Why were they not looking at him when he skinned the porg? Were they not looking at him when they roasted the porg? Why didn't he just take the bite and end it all? But we loved the moment. It was a great climax for me. It was a great climax to the whole porg conversation that we've had since we've known of the term porg. And of course we had the other scenes where, they're on the Millennium Falcon and the baby porgs and the nests and all of that. But that has just been a conversation around our house for the last week.
When I saw this for the first time and I saw that it appeared that Chewie was going to eat that, I thought, oh my gosh, Matt Moore is going to flip out. I was really excited.
I told you, porgs are delicious.
Yeah, porgs I thought were really delightful. How did you all feel about the porgs? In all honesty,
I was pleasantly surprised, actually. I thought that was kind of a throwaway thing they were just doing for fun and kicks, but I liked when they were fun to see on the screen. They didn't overtake it, and I would own one. I think all my kids were excited to see if they actually existed. But no, they don't.
No, I agree. I was definitely surprised as well. I was kind of getting a little nervous from all the previews that were coming up, but then once we got the preview where Chewie just slaps it off the dash of the Falcon, I was like, okay, these guys might not be as bad as I'm thinking they were. And they actually fit in good. I actually enjoyed it, especially that Chewbacca scene. That took the cake there.
I thought they did a splendid job of making them part of the background and not diluting the film itself. Yes. The way it was done was perfect. Like from that scene, where the porgs get those big round eyes where Chewie's about to chow down, and then he kind of goes, well, maybe I shouldn't do this. But I love seeing them infesting the Falcon like vermin. I'm not saying those varmints are vermin, but I just thought it was kind of cool because that's what they would do, and it worked. It was very effective. I was at the theater with both of my kids, and they both laughed aloud, and they loved it, and helped draw them in deeper into the film. And just again, seeing on the big screen that porg going rah was really cool.
Well, and how about when you thought, oh my goodness, just like that meme, that porg is going to blast itself right through the eye with a lightsaber, and then fortunately it didn't happen.
I have to admit, I kind of held my breath there for a second because I was thinking, wait a minute, this is Rian Johnson. I could definitely see that blade igniting.
It wasn't overdone. I think it was an additive, and I thought that was really cool. It seemed like every time they showed up on screen and made a statement that the audience, both times that I've seen it, the audience responded to it with laughter. And so it was, it wasn't like, it was received by the audience that I was watching the movie with. So it was pretty cool. I would agree with Matt that it had its place, and they stayed in their place and served a purpose of comic relief when we needed it. So,
it was pleasant. It was a nice little escape from the heavy, and it was cute.
Anytime I go to a Star Wars movie, the first thing that I have to look at, and it's number one on my list, is the music. Oh man, I loved John Williams' work in this movie. All the throwback pieces he'd add in there. All the new pieces in there. The music just set the tone for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed this soundtrack that he did for Last Jedi.
I've been listening to soundtrack nonstop. I agree with you. There are just certain key moments. Really, there's just a couple of main themes that are kind of recycled often, but yeah, it's great. I mean, anytime you can get me in the middle of December to listen to something that's not Christmas music, you're doing something right.
Yeah, definitely. It was. I don't know. There's just something powerful about this soundtrack compared to even The Force Awakens. When I was excited when The Force Awakens soundtrack came out, and getting new John Williams Star Wars music, and I loved that one. But this one, there's just something about this one that, and I haven't been able to put my finger on it yet, but that just makes it stand out even more. And I've enjoyed this one a lot more than I have. I've definitely more than Rogue One or Force Awakens, but I gotta say it's probably quickly becoming one of my favorite Williams soundtracks.
Well, the Rogue One conversation that we had last year, I remember that was probably as heated as we got as far as kind of where we stood on that, because some people didn't like it, some people really did. I liked Rogue One's better than The Force Awakens, but I think this one is the best one since Disney took over.
I will say this was going to be one of my main points as well, talking about the music. And one thing that I was going to make mention of with this is, with so much of the theme of this movie within the movie, and then conversation outside of the movie of how much change is happening within just the whole aura of this film. The one consistent that I was going to mention with this is John Williams and the beauty of the music. And I wonder if that is part of what makes it so powerful is the familiarity in among the change that this film represents.
It could be. Matt, it's up to you now. What is the top one that you have written down so far?
Well, I'm going to actually go with probably the more deeper inflection point on this. And to me, the biggest point about this film was a passing of the torch, if you will, and a generational shift. And I came into this film very excited because I was going to see Luke Skywalker. I was going to see at least two of the characters, if not more, that I grew up with since I was 7-8 years old. And I left that theater after all the events unwound, and I had this almost sense of contentment that was melded in with relief, because it had pitched forward and the new generation was stepping up to sort of take this baton, if you will, to carry this franchise forward. And it's almost in a sense, it was cathartic, because now I know, you know what? I've had my Star Wars and I've enjoyed it while it's lasted. And now it's time for somebody new to come up and know these feelings that I've nurtured and carried with me for 40 years. So to me, that was the biggest takeaway from this film. And I feel good about that. I was kind of worried about that, because I love nostalgia. I'm a Generation Xer. I came of age in the 1980s, so I'm all about nostalgia. I love it to death. But I want my things that I loved to be loved and enjoyed by other people, but in their own way and with things that appeal to them. And to me, I think that's what Lucasfilm has done here.
I completely agree with you, and that's going to tie into something one of mine. But that to me is one of the biggest things that people are the most concerned with, and we will address the concerns that people have, because this is probably the most divisive Star Wars film since The Phantom Menace. I would venture to say, which I never would have dreamed in a million years the first time I walked out of that theater. But yeah, the passing of the torch, and I'm assuming that all of you caught when that young boy at the end, the broom flies to his hand.
Yeah.
I visit, my wife looked at me and says, "Are you okay?" I said, "Did you see that?" She goes, "Yes. The next generation is there and they're waiting to be discovered." And then when he, when the camera zeroed in on the ring on his finger, I mean, it was literally like, I'm getting goosebumps now just thinking about it, but I just realized that's it. That is the future of Star Wars. I know. And this is why Star Wars will always endure.
And maybe that's the new trilogy that Rian Johnson is doing.
I doubt that highly, but I mean, just, when it's just in this wider expanse of the fact that we've had our characters have had their time in the sun, and what a great run that they had. They had joy, they had fun, they had seasons in the sun. I'll drop some Terry Jacks love here, but now it's time for these other characters. Now it's time for Finn and Rey and Poe and BB-8. and Rose, of course, to move to the center of attention and to become the focus.
But why do you doubt that would be the new trilogy? Just because it's just probably too soon to reveal that?
Oh, I think Rian Johnson is going to go off into a very far corner of the Star Wars galaxy that none of us has ever heard. As a matter of fact, I'm of the mind that they're in the process of world building what the next trilogy is going to be. I mean, we'll have elements, I think, those trace elements of what makes Star Wars Star Wars.
Sure.
But I think it's going to be something completely different.
This is Coffee with Kenobi. Oh, pass the cream, would you?
Coffee with Kenobi is also sponsored by the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps. If you love Star Wars and love the excitement of chasing your favorite Star Wars collectibles, the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps is for you. Download the free app from iTunes or Google Play and collect your favorite images from the classic 1977 Star Wars cards to the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, The Last Jedi, and much more. Collect and trade with friends new and old through the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps. These are the cards you're looking for. Let's talk about the Coffee with Kenobi Patreon page and what that means for us as well as for you as members of our Coffee with Kenobi family. But before we do, I'd like to give a very special shout out to Tyler Wiggins, Ben Elkington, Terry Lee, Dennis Keithley, Aaron Harris, Angela Souse, Mediocre Jedi, Christian Dale, Jason Hall, Brian McKinney, Jim Capron, Connie Shee, Mike Audette, Jared Cantor, BJ Smith, Eric Struthers, Nick Deco, and Mark Suter. The thing about Coffee with Kenobi and why we have a Patreon page is because there are a number of expenses that come up when you try to run a podcast, a web page, a YouTube channel, anything that is a part of the creative process that helps you get more involved in your fandom and help spread the word to other people so they can get inspired as well. And as I mentioned, that sometimes costs money, and I'm talking about things like hosting your web page, the microphone upkeep, the cables, when you have computer problems. All of these things have certainly been a factor of Coffee with Kenobi over the past 4 years. There are also things we can use the Patreon contributions for, such as travel for airline, hotels, food, and transportation. And I've been very fortunate to do a lot of traveling, especially over the past year, from Coffee with Kenobi, and a lot of that is because of your generosity. And you get incentives, too. For $5 a month, you get recognition at the start of each show and receive a follow from us on Twitter. $10 and up, you get access to our Discord page, and it's basically a message board, and there's a great app for it that's very accessible. And as we get closer and closer to the end of Rebels, as well as Episode 8, Star Wars The Last Jedi, there's going to be so much to talk about. 35 and up, you get coffee mugs, T-shirts, and depending on how much you contribute a month, you can co-host one show, 2 shows, or an entire month of shows, and which is 4 since we are weekly, of course. And it's just you and me and one other guest, and we'll be talking Star Wars and running the show, so you'll get to see what goes on and how to make this podcast happen each and every week and be a part of the creative process and what topics we come up with. There are a lot of great opportunities there. So if you're interested, please email me at feedback@coffeewithkenobi.com or check out our Patreon page, which you can find on our show notes and at the top of our webpage. Thank you so much. Randy, what about you? What is the first one you have on your list?
Well, I do have an honorable mention. So if this will be my first of 5, but sure. the Gareth Edwards cameos both in Episode 8 here and in Rogue One, that there might be a connection as far as like relatives, like because both characters are canon. We saw them both in Rogue One. We saw him in Rogue One and Episode 8. So I thought that was really cool. But my real one that I want to bring to the table is kind of to kind of piggyback on what Matt has just shared. The whole idea of Rose as a character. I love her as a character. I just finished Cobalt Squadron and left a review on coffeewithkenobi.com. But I loved her as a character. I felt like her kind of like starstruck when she first comes on the scene. That's what every single one of us would feel in the face or confronting or face to face with our hero or with somebody that we admire. That kind of you're Finn kind of thing. And I felt like that she was honest all the way through. I thought that I agree with you completely, Dan, that she dropped, the most amazing line of dialogue through the whole thing. And there was a lot of really cool lines in the movie, but the whole idea of we don't fight what we hate, we protect what we love line was like stunning, awesome, straight to the heart. And so that Rose would be one of the highlights for me in this movie.
There are so many lines in this movie that are just speak to me and really have been reverberating through my mind every time I think about this movie, which is often, of course, as I'm sure as all of you. But yes, her line at the end, that is the line of the film. It's a wonderful philosophy to have. It ties in perfectly to culture. My first one is the very unique maturity and tone of this film. When I left, I just felt like this doesn't feel like Star Wars at all, and I'm so happy. I didn't know that I wanted this kind of film. I didn't know I needed this kind of film. But now that we have it and we see that, I mean, obviously there's humor, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and there's severe things going on. There's a lot of intensity. There's a lot of pathos, but it's just a very, very mature film. And I think part of that is because really we're not planet hopping so much as just sort of trying to sneak away in space, and which ties into some of the criticisms that people have of this film. But to me, this is more character driven than anything. And Star Wars is a very character driven mythology, but this tapped into some things and went some places that I didn't expect. And it's blown my mind. It's going to give us material for podcasts for years to come.
Cool.
Yeah. Just to ring true on that, Dan, that thought process was sitting with me ever since I saw it the first time. Was just like, how I can't grasp this. I didn't know how to, tell people about it. People are asking, "Hey, what'd you think? How do you like it?" And I obviously couldn't. I basically said, "Go see it." And and all in all, I think to me, this is not the film I wanted it to be, but the film it needed it to be. In the end, like you guys had all mentioned, just different pieces that you've liked so far. This took a lot of risk, I think, like you said, Dan, and it paid off. It's interesting too, because maybe it's not my favorite one, but it's the one that it needs to be right now in the Star Wars universe.
And I think a lot of the reason for that is because of the reasons that Matt said too.
Sure.
It's because at the end, when it wraps up and Luke has that beautiful, piece of dialogue where it says, "It's amazing everything you said in that sentence was wrong." Because the rebellion has been reborn, and the war just started, and I will not be the last Jedi. And they show these faces of these characters that are new to us, but they're not new to us. And we know we're going to different places like Matt. So we've had a 40-year run with these characters. And I think that's why it's hard for people to embrace this very, very, very bold move that Lucasfilm has piloted. But what do the rest of you think?
I think that if I may, I think that I'm of the opinion that I don't know if I'll ever bring myself to watch The Force Awakens again. That's how much
wow,
because this movie has made The Force Awakens such a memory, or given a choice. I'd rather watch where we're at now than where we've been, I guess. And I think people that are, because I've heard a lot of criticism, people that know I'm a Star Wars fan come up to me boldly and say, "That was a terrible movie." I'm like, "What didn't you like about it?" And you want to go back to The Force Awakens where there was, hardly any risk. It was safe. Another trench run, would you rather go back to that? Or would you you can't have your cake and eat it too. That The Force Awakens was, there's no risk. And we've seen these, we've seen this before, haven't we? A giant planet or killer, blah, 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 and a trench run and this and that. Okay, fine. But when somebody really puts himself out there and takes risks at as many turns that Rian Johnson did, you can't cry, "Oh, it's too different. It's not even Star Wars." It's either one or the other, And so that's kind of what's frustrating with me as I talk with people.
No, I agree. And I definitely want to get into that because I have a laundry list of things of critiques that people have, and I'm, I have a different way of looking at it, as do you, Randy, and we all do. And yeah, that's the people who are complaining. Well, you know what? Let's just stick to the positive.
Okay, gotcha.
We'll get back to that for sure. Cory, what is the second one on your list?
Sure. And like we've mentioned too, it kind of brings that nostalgia feeling into this film. We bring our own emotions to this film. One that got me the goosebumps, and I'm not a crier, but man, seeing Yoda and Luke together, it's almost indescribable for me to see that on the screen again. I didn't, for number one, it was I didn't expect it at all. Kudos to you, Dan, for not giving a hint away, having seen it before me, and I really stayed offline to not spoil it. So I felt really good going in, and that one just really kicked me right in the heart. And it was just like, man, this is so cool to see this on screen. And they pulled it off so well. I think that whole interaction between Yoda and Luke was just, it brought a lot to the conversation of Star Wars, the Force, their relationship, and moving ahead too. I mean, there's so much depth in that. You could have a whole podcast, I think, just on that scene alone, them discussing and just being there in the trilogy, or being there in the saga again for Yoda was very welcomed, and really a very pleased fan for me.
It seemed like he was a very settled Yoda. We've been exposed for so long to Yoda through the Clone Wars TV series, and of course the events of the prequel, in which he was, the pondering, thoughtful, wise Jedi master, and the adept and deft military strategist. And this was a nice return to the Yoda when we first met him in Empire Strikes Back, where he's wizened, but he's sort of like an old coot with a great sense of humor. Where he masks this earnestness with bouts of just I don't want to say buffoonery, but just he's kind of he's willing to poke fun at himself and others. And that one line about when with the books being burned, about the books, the texts, real page turners. that made me laugh out loud.
Yeah.
But to build on what Cory said, it amplifies the sacred bond between teacher and student, and master and Padawan. And it's almost like it was when Vader told Kenobi, when last we met, you were the master, and I was the learner. Now I am the master. And I kept on seeing that, on Ach-2 with, it didn't come out directly, but that was the impression that I was taking out of it, was that, the master is greeting his former pupil, who is now himself the master, but who is troubled. And so now it's time for the teacher to teach him again. And he did. He imparted some final lessons and did what he was supposed to do. And that was touching, I thought.
I gave an essay today for the Mythology Final, where I asked people to explain what Yoda means when he says failure is the best teacher. And the responses I've gotten have just been transcendent and exciting, because I think there's so much in just that sequence alone that is just completely rich and ripe for plenty of podcast fodder. My goodness, it's beautiful. Tom, what is the second one you have on your list?
That's a tough one to follow up. So I'm going to shift to a new character that has really been in the back of my mind a lot since I saw it last week. And I want to talk a little bit about DJ. I felt like, in reflection, that DJ was sort of the low point of the movie for me. Kind of the symbol of lost hope. Going in, or I don't know what my expectations were, but he definitely was not what I was expecting. He's the escape artist, the swindler, but he's no Han Solo or Lando Calrissian. What was I thinking? I feel like I was a fool to think that that's what I was going to get when he came on screen. But what really stays with me with Benicio del Toro's character DJ is the scene when they're on the stolen ship. Now, you guys might be able to clarify some things for me, because I've only seen it once, and it was a week ago. But they're on the ship, and they discover who steals the ship. and they discover it's a weapons dealer or a smuggler or something. And he starts flipping up those holograms of the ships. Do you recall that moment?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're sort of talking about, and they have this perception of all these guys are like, all these wealthy, scuzzy people at Canto Bight are, built upon the shoulders of the First Order, and they're the suppliers of doom. And then DJ flips to that Resistance X-Wing. I think it was an X-Wing, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
And like me sitting in the theater, and I felt like Rose and Finn had the exact same reaction I did when it became aware to us that this isn't just the First Order built Canto Bight, that the Resistance is as guilty in paying in money to these people, and they are so oblivious to this war, this Cold War, whatever you want to call it. But the line that really stuck with me, and I'm not sure I'm going to get it exactly right, but DJ says to Rose and Finn, "Set yourself free." And it just was like, I just went back to Snoke telling Kylo Ren to destroy the past, and Yoda telling Luke to let go of the texts. And it was sort of the middle ground of DJ's just saying, why do you care? Let it go. Go your own way. And of course, we know that they don't, but I don't know. I'm curious as to what you guys think about that moment or the character DJ.
Right off the bat, when he entered the scene, I was like, this guy's smooth. He's not Han Solo, but he's kind of a trashy, does his own thing type guy. I liked him off the bat until we get to the scene of him kind of turning the Finn and Rose over. I was like, oh, I don't like him anymore. But he needed to be that character to kind of, like you said, pull back the veil a little bit. And again, like we've kind of been coming back to, is like, this isn't the Star Wars you think it is. We're pulling, not pulling punches here. We're going to tell you exactly what's going on. And yeah, maybe the rebels or the resistance is not doing so nice things to get what they want. I mean, it's war. I mean, it's what you do. So I think he's there to fill that gap and make it known to the audience and to the characters that this is different. This is something you need to make a choice on, whether you are fighting for the resistance or the Empire.
Well, I think it all falls back to that old chestnut of, one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist. And,
Wow.
that scene was crucial because it's important for people to realize that, people in Canto Bight have made their fortunes because of this conflict, stemming from, when the First Order first emerged from, from the outer reaches to come in and stake claim to their own territory and set up this sort of these treaties with the New Republic. And the New Republic was blind to it, probably willingly, doing the old see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And, this is why we have the resistance, which is in and of itself, I mean, just by that name alone, is going to spark debate. Well, are they agitating, or have they, did they force the First Order into action, or was it just the First Order was going to act anyway? I think it's the latter, obviously, because of their criminal intent and their tyrannical methodologies. But the people in Canto Bight, they profit either way, and they're going to look both ways. And DJ is a reflection of that. I mean, how many people in the wider galaxy are there? They realize they're caught in between in the midst of this struggle between two sides. Neither one of them, is not really busting out to save them. So they've got to look out for themselves.
True, very true. My wife has this fascinating theory that DJ is the balance of the Force, because he's not really good or he's not really bad, and she's got this huge theory, which is pretty fascinating.
But he doesn't have any moose antlers
that we know of. Maybe that'll be the new trilogy. So
there you go.
Aaron, what is your second one that you have on your list?
Well, the second one I really wanted to discuss was, of course, little more somber at this point, because we had Carrie Fisher pass away this year, and having this movie come out and seeing her in the movie, it was. I mean, when I first saw her on screen, it was kind of brought a tear to my eye. It was kind of exciting to see, but a heartbreaker at the same point, because we know this is it. So I wanted to get everybody else's thoughts on this being Carrie's final film, and of course, her obviously we see her power in the Force, as well as she has her little Mary Poppins moment out in space. Mm-hmm. But to me, Leia really helped make this film. Carrie Fisher her performance was phenomenal, and it's definitely somebody I'm going to miss seeing on screen going forward.
If I may add to that, that'll be my next the thing that I would that I'd like to kind of bring on my list that I wanted to talk about. So I'll just use that up. If I might jump ahead in front of you, Matt, but the scene where Luke kisses Leia's forehead, it was a pretty emotional moment for me. Yeah. And in a way, kissing her, for all of us, kissing her goodbye. Oh, wow. And I just, there are some other scenes that were emotional in the movie, and even her being blown off the bridge there, that was a moment, but it was nothing like it. It was the on-screen version of the image that we saw from, I believe it was from Entertainment Weekly, where Mark Hamill was holding Carrie Fisher, and with so much closeness and intimacy and friendship, and that was the on-screen version of that image, of that picture. And to have
that was just Vanity Fair, right?
Oh, was it? Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Oh, it's okay.
So I just wanted to echo that, Aaron. I thought that her whole performance was incredible. But that particular moment and kind of kissing her goodbye for all of us was stunning, beautiful, tragic. It made me miss her all over again. It was December 27th, so it was almost a year ago. Wow. When we lost her, and so that was, I keep saying, I don't have any other words except for it. There was a lump in my throat, and I was fighting back tears in that moment. So thanks for bringing that up, Aaron.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Greetings. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
The Star Wars Digital Card Trader collecting app features incredible images from many aspects of the saga, including the original trilogy, the prequels, the Clone Wars, Rebels, The Force Awakens, and Rogue One. It's the quality you have come to expect from Topps. It's also easy to get into and really fun, too. Your favorite Star Wars characters, scenes, and moments are in every pack. To get started, download the app for free from iTunes or Google Play, and then be sure to open the app each day for free credits to spend on card packs from the Cantina. Plus, if you can't get what you're looking for, there's a place to trade with your friends as you complete your Star Wars collection. And if you're an experienced collector, there are exclusive cards, special inserts, and autograph opportunities for you to enjoy. Don't worry about missing the cards and sets you want either, as you can sign up for notifications right on the app. The Star Wars Digital Card Trader collecting app from Topps can be downloaded for free from iTunes or Google Play. Be sure to download the app and start your collection today. The Star Wars Digital Card Trader collecting app from Topps is available now. And remember, these are the cards you're looking for.
Matt, what is your second one on your list?
Well, I'm going to tie in to Leia, to Carrie Fisher. I was stunned almost with her portrayal of Leia, because we see her very weary and driven and still in mourning. And as a matter of fact, if you notice the way her hair was done, she was wearing an Alderanian mourning braid, obviously because of the loss of Han, but I think also perhaps because of the loss of her son, because of, she knows Ben is lost. I mean, she can feel it. I think that scene where Ben/Kylo is in his TIE silencer with his wingmen on each side of him going in after the Lattes, and she feels him and he feels her. And there's a moment where she sort of, her breath catches and she's not entirely sure that he's not going to not fire. And she's almost like she's preparing herself, and just the way her facial expression, I mean, it had such this range of emotion that you could see, like, I have so much business that is undone, and what is going to happen to these people who have been looking to me for years for their, for my leadership, and what will happen to them. At the same time, she's having to square that with the fact that it's my son, and I still believe there's good in him, but is there, and have I lost him forever? And of course, later on in the film, she realized, she says, my son is, I've lost my son. My son is gone, and she brought Fisher brought such powerful emotion to it without having to crack her voice. It was just the way she looked and the way she glanced. I mean, that scene on Crate where she's looking through the massive doors out onto the salt plains with the high collar, and just, you could just feel it. I almost had the impression that perhaps maybe she realized this might be my last time out. But knowing Carrie Fisher, not that I know Carrie Fisher, but and all the perceptions I've had of her and of all the interviews with her that I've read, she really threw herself into this role. She really made it, and I'm trying to square that with the fact that during the pre-film publicity they talked about how basically The Last Jedi was, The Force Awakens was Han's arc, and The Last Jedi was Luke's arc, and then Episode 9 was going to be Leia's arc. And I really think, as much as we want The Last Jedi to have been Luke's arc, considering what happened at the end, I really think this ended up being Leia's arc a lot. Because even amidst all of that destruction and that loss, that horrendous loss of resistance, life, and materiel, when they were just down to that handful at the point that you could fit the entire resistance onto the Falcon, she still had that glimmer of hope. And I love that she still had that desire, that there will be a future, even as maybe I'm alone in this, but it seemed to me that Princess Leia, General Organa, had expended all of her political and personal capital. Nobody came to help them. Nobody replied. And I think when she, she accepted that, but she didn't let it tear her down, because I think that stoked that inner fire within her of like, well, by God, I will lead it myself, and I will help what's left to build anew, and we will move this forward. And she personified that hope. She was a new hope.
And she was also the one that she was the one to officially declare hope's gone, but then it comes back instantly in the form, of course, of her brother. So that, Leia is actually the next point on mine as well. We all appear to be like-minded in this aspect. Imagine that. But for me specifically, every time I saw General Organa, every time I saw Carrie Fisher on screen, I never felt sad. Not one time. I've just felt in awe. Because I feel like this was the strongest that Leia has ever been on screen. Say what you will about the other films. I mean, obviously, she's great in those. But this is someone who's towards the end of where she is going to be. And she's got so much clout. And she's no nonsense, but she's flawed. She almost gets killed. And if not for her pedigree, would have been killed. And that scene, the scene, where the Leia music comes on in a very haunting fashion, and she moves her hand and uses the Force. When that happened, two things went through my mind. The first thing was this, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. This is angelic. How haunting and lovely that this is going on right now. And I knew that people would kind of give a little bit of pushback on that, but I actually don't really understand that. And it's because her father is Anakin Skywalker. Her brother is Luke Skywalker, two of the the two probably the most powerful Jedis who ever lived. So of course she's going to have that. And I also thought it's about time. I was hoping that we would finally see her exude some sort of force ability besides being able to sense when her brother or her family, her loved ones are near, which is beautiful and important in its own right. But this was a moment where you saw she's a survivor through the Force, and in Leia, Princess of Alderaan, I've mentioned this before, but there is a scene where she almost suffocates from a mudslide during something that's going on, part of her trials as she moves up the ladder in Alderaan, and the Force takes over and kind of floats her to safety. And when I read that, I thought, oh, are they giving Leia a Force ability? And it was just like a paragraph or two, and it was never discussed again. And I never heard anyone talking about it online. But when I saw that moment, I thought, there it is. There it is. And to me, that is one of the most transcendent scenes in all of film. And I just can't even understand any negativity about that. It was already very clear that Carrie Fisher filmed everything for The Last Jedi, and they weren't going to change her character arc at all. So I don't know what people were expecting, but to me, it was lovely.
Yes.
So now, anybody want to add to that, or do you want to move on to, because we're on round 3?
I think we'll leave it right there. It's pretty, with an involuntary moment of silence.
Sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
For our dear departed general. Cory, what is your number 3?
Yeah, I'm gonna number 3 was something that I really enjoyed as an artist and graphic designer, and just imagery based in film. I think it's a great medium to show off the skill level. In the Battle of Crate, I think I'm saying that Crate or Crate.
Crate.
Thank you. The white against the red was a really nice aspect of calling back to the posters we've seen, the promotional items, the toys, even. Everything kind of leads back to that. And also, I think we talked about this in an earlier episode, that the color of red is prominent in a lot of places in this film, but really heavily so in this battle. We see footprints, we see ski speeders, zipping through. We see Kylo Ren fighting Luke and him sliding through the salt and making those almost like blood looking things, and then of course after the aftermath of them blasting Luke and all the really gross, ugly looking impact it made there. It was just a great imagery, I think, to show what was going on this entire time, how bloodthirsty the First Order is, and how smooth, almost as light as salt as some of these characters can be. It was just a great comparison, a great balance, I thought, and a great way to have a great battle scene and a wonderful ending.
I find it interesting too that the First Order, at least the Empire, for a long time, for 19 years, they went under this guise of, we're actually trying to help, we're trying to bring peace to the galaxy, we're going to come to your planet and help you out. And of course, it ended up being, terrorism and and genocide in some cases. But every time the First Order appears, they're just so fast and vicious, and even when they use their blasters, it just seems like they just keep coming. That there's just so much speed and power behind the First Order, and they don't operate under pretense, which makes them all the more scary. So I totally know what you're saying.
As far as the design goes, as that sequence begins, there's a symmetry to it that was beautiful. As those that kind of wide shot as the ski speeders are they're all running toward or flying toward all the walkers, and the symmetry and you could see the straight lines and then the moment, like the switch, the moment they scatter and go and chaos ensues. I think that is even more beautiful, but both are amazing. But that's what I was thinking when I was looking at it, and I've seen it a second time, looking forward to that moment where chaos and everyone starts zigzagging all over the place, as if to say, you think this is beautiful, wait till you see this design, almost like somebody was painting and just went, you know what, forget the boundaries. Let's just make something awesome.
Right. Which they definitely did. Tom, what's number 3 on your list?
Number 3 on my list is going back to our conversation about the changing of the guard and the new characters who we're familiar with from Force Awakens, but new to the story, kind of. And the two characters I want to talk about are Finn and Poe. To this point, I feel like they're kind of like the merry men of the Resistance, and maybe now of the New Rebellion. Poe, after The Last Jedi, in my mind, is cemented as the best fighter pilot in the galaxy, if not in the history of the Republic, Rebellion, Resistance, especially considering he has no force ability. He had some amazing moves in this film, and the creativity on Rian Johnson to what can an X-Wing do through the hands of Poe Dameron was just, in my feeling, just amazing. But then at the same time, we have Finn, who has bested his First Order superior twice now. Threw her one time into a trash compactor, and then now threw her into an exploding ball of fire. So these two are significant players in the story, but I feel like they go undervalued by the Resistance. In fact, if they were in a fantasy league, I think I'd get them much later in the draft and be completely happy with the results. But I know Leia sees it in Poe, but the movie really demonstrated how these two are just waiting to explode onto the screen. When they choose Vice Admiral Holdo to lead this ragtag resistance to escape from the First Order, you can clearly see Poe has this disappointment inside of him. He drops his head and at the mention of her name, and Finn seems to run around aimlessly at this point of the movie, without Rey there. So he connects with Rose, who I think is a beautiful character. And then they do this little mission with Poe Dameron. So I have to say, one of the things I look forward to in the last installment is seeing how these two work their way to being the new leaders of a new rebellion.
Wow. A lot of good. Yeah. Poe, but I feel like Poe and Finn, I don't know about you guys, I feel like Poe and Finn kind of changed the driver's seat from this to The Force Awakens.
Oh, they did immensely. And, and if you've been reading the Poe Dameron comics from Marvel, you will have seen that gradual evolution. Now, granted, these comics take place before the events of The Force Awakens, but I noticed that a lot of the character development in Poe in The Last Jedi was redolent of stuff that Charles Soule has written in the Poe Dameron Monthly. Not completely, but just some of the the more thoughtful action before being bold. There's that old chestnut again that I will steal this liberally from the black hole. There are old pilots and there are bold pilots, but there are no old, bold pilots. And I think Poe Dameron may prove that one wrong, because I think he might be bold and old as we go forward.
Good point. I bought the black hole on iTunes last week. I was very excited.
You're a good man.
Vincent. All right, Aaron, what's your third one?
Well, the third one for me actually was pretty much the first part of the movie. As we all know, we have the First Order chasing down the Republic, or not the Republic, but the Resistance cruiser, and trying to just pretty much catch up and blow them out of the water, but they're able to keep their distance and just keep them at bay. And to me, there's a lot of throwbacks in this movie and a lot of nods to what came before. And to me, this particular scene, storyline with them chasing down the chase, essentially the chase, reminded me actually of an arc of the Clone Wars when the Republic fleet's chasing down the Malevolence. And Grievous' flagship there, I think it was in the first season. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a nice, whether it was intentional or not, I thought that was a nice nod there to what came back, to what came ahead, came before, not just the nods to the movies, but they're actually making, there's an actual, whether intentional or not, a nod to the animated shows as well, tying them into the movies as well.
Both of those connections that you and Matt are talking about with the stuff in Poe, I thought the relationship between Poe and Leia resonated even more because of Charles Soule and what he has done with that series. But yeah, seeing the connections in the space battles, and boy, it just makes you appreciate how rich this universe is. Matt, what's your third one?
My third one was the development of some of the lesser tier characters, and by lesser tier, I don't mean to demean them in any way, but characters with whom we had become very invested in outside of the films. For example, Snoke, and of course all the theories surrounding who Snoke may have been, or his origin, or his role, and with the Empire coming into the First Order, and Captain Phasma. In watching this film, Snoke, I think, he did get a lot more screen time, and he was a lot more malevolent, and he, was no longer just this big blue floating head, which was a vast improvement, I thought. But at the same time, we got no backstory and almost no information on him whatsoever. Captain Phasma, that was a very riveting scene, where Finn and Phasma fight on board the Supremacy, because he and Rose are about to be executed very publicly because this is FN 2187, the only First Order trooper who has broken conditioning of the First Order. And although I don't think that was very widely known among the troops, that's not something they would have wanted to maintain and to have it get out. So I'm sure they kept that in check. But seeing her bested by Finn was cathartic, but then seeing her fall into the pit of fire as amid all the explosions and the destruction, I felt almost kind of like, well, I really liked her character, but I had to wonder, coming at this from somebody who hasn't read any of the books. I mean, I read Phasma, I read the Captain Phasma miniseries, and so and if you have, who she is, you know her origins, why she is the way she is, and it was a perfect line that she said to Finn, you were always scum, and then Finn replying, rebel scum. As one final sort of kick in the
I love
Easter
that
to her. It was a great line. It was awesome, but I felt that it was it's almost like giving that character short shrift because there was a lot more to her, I think. But again, if you hadn't read any of these books or these comics, you probably don't feel that way. Now, as for Snoke, I mean, I think that's one reason we have a lot of this self-aggrandizing backlash toward this film amongst a small segment of the Star Wars fandom, is because they spent 2 years formulating these theories among themselves about who Snoke is and what Snoke's role is going to be or was going to be. And clearly his only role right now is just to have his tongue lollygagging on the floor because he's been sliced in half, because he did not know how to read his learner very well. But I would have liked to have known more about him. And I'm kind of not, I don't want to say concerned, but I'm thinking that perhaps maybe somewhere down the road we might get a Snoke novel like we did with Tarkin, for example. Mm. But even then, the impact is going to be lost because there's no way I could see Snoke returning in Episode 9 whatsoever. I mean, he's dead. He's as they said, DED, dead. Yeah, I'm kidding. I do know how to spell dead, of course, but I just think it would have been nice to have gotten a little more backstory on Snoke. I mean, even if it was just a throwaway line of when I was on Coruscant and watching the Emperor seize control from the Senate, I knew my path lied somewhere else, and we didn't get any of that. So, but then again, I'm also not letting that detract my enjoyment of the film either.
Thank you,
detract from the enjoyment of the film.
Oh, sure, and thank you for offering something that I can put in the beginning of the next show. Thank you for making my life a lot easier. Randy, what is your third one that you would like to talk about?
My third is the opening sequence. We've watched enough making of videos. There's enough making of footage out there for us to know that basically George Lucas taped together World War II plane dogfight images to kind of throw together his ideas for space battles and things like that. And from the very first glimpse of the turrets that are at the bottom of those bombers, it was familiar language, familiar imagery, but to be as bold as to actually put a B-17 turret at the bottom of a space, a sci-fi. It was old and new, just like we understand Star Wars to be. It was
Star Fortresses. I mean, they even named them after the flying fortresses.
Yeah,
Star Fort.
Yeah, amazing. Every moment of that was just gorgeous, and the tension of the slow speed as they inched closer and closer to their target, and they're blowing up one after another not necessarily because of it wasn't because of they were taking fire. It's because they are such a volatile target. They actually ended up blowing each other up and bumping into each other, and so the satisfaction and the payoff of Paige hitting that red button and seeing all of those slide out of their slots and fall toward their target was beautiful and amazing and intense and satisfying all at the same time. The sacrificial, my favorite characters and moments in Star Wars are always, and we always talk about this on Legends Library, just because we end up talking about so much story. It's the sacrificial characters that I'm really drawn to, that put self-preservation aside and choose the greater good. I always love that. I'm a sucker for that kind of story, and Paige's sacrifice at the very beginning of the movie and all that went with that, with the incredible flying of Poe Dameron. That spin around move was unbelievable. Was breathtaking in itself, and the humor with BB-8 trying to plug the holes and like the whole thing. But just the tension of looking down, looking out of the bridge down the nose of that huge Star Destroyer and just seeing one very slow fortress bomber inching its way toward its target, and the tension that created, and then the satisfaction of seeing it blow up was incredible. And I was thinking about, is there? I mean, I was thinking about I guess it's equivalent to maybe Episode 3 with that opening sequence that, it starts with Obi-Wan and Anakin in their starfighters and ends with Anakin landing that ship with Palpatine on the bridge, landing a half a ship, or whatever. That was an intense sequence, but this was a cut above anything as far as intensity.
Oh yeah, the level of cost throughout this film, and they set the tone, and you mentioned it beautifully, Randy, with the beginning with the bomber and Rose's sister's, brave sacrifice. And yet you just knew right away that's why I think throughout the entire movie, I didn't think anybody was safe. And I'm including Finn and Poe in that as well. And that raised the stakes for me to such a level that I think that I know a lot of people say the second time was better. To me, the first time was still the best because I had all those surprises lined up and I didn't know about any of them. And It just made it so much more riveting for me. My third is Luke Skywalker / Mark Hamill. I mentioned at the top of the show that I thought this was an Oscar-worthy performance. Yeah, I think it is. It's amazing. I believe very strongly that this is Luke. This is who Luke Skywalker is. This entire film was very meta-constructive, where it is basically talking about how the film is made and about Star Wars in our culture in conjunction with what is going on with these characters in the movie. And Luke, in this poignant moment talks to Rey about how he's become, the Jedi are deified and Luke is almost deified, and he is Luke Skywalker, and it's this huge legacy. He's such a legend, and he thinks that that's nonsense, and he has incredible doubt, and he's so human and so flawed, and it makes sense because yes, he redeemed his father. That's about as good as it's going to get. And then as we do in adulthood, we learn from our mistakes, and we get on the other side, and we learn lessons. But we end up reliving these moments, and not exactly in the same way, but we're always finding ourselves in similar situations and having to relearn. Luke has the same thing. I think it makes him more realistic and more meaningful and more impactful than he has ever been. And that just hit me so beautifully. And he, of course, he has some sort of PTSD, and blaming himself clearly for letting down his sister and, the loss of the Jedi Padawans or whatever he called them in his little group. But all that being said, and I could definitely go on for days about that, the end sequence when Luke shows up and restores hope and inspires everyone, and he goes out there with his, as they, foreshadow at the beginning, with his laser sword and takes on the First Order, and they blast him, and the red dust explodes almost like it's blood, and then he brushes off his shoulder. While I'm saying this to all of you, my goosebumps are just through the roof. That is my favorite scene in any Star Wars movie ever. I just cannot even tell you how I clapped and I cheered like I was watching Michael Jordan in the NBA Finals. I can't even tell you how loud I was in that screening when I saw that, because this was the Luke Skywalker moment, the Luke Skywalker movie I've been waiting for 30 years, and my goodness, the payoff was lovely. Cory, let's get back to the top for you and your number 4.
Sure. Yeah, for me, the Rey and Kylo Ren connection was pretty cool. Both those characters grew a lot, I think, for themselves, each other. They learned a lot from each other. And just them having a connection was really big in that way. I mean, it was cool to see them, both be kind of uneven on the grounding of what they were currently doing, both learning to the Force, both kind of, learning, discovering things along the way. They didn't know what they wanted, either of them. And then that connection too. I think one of the greatest moments in this film was that throne room, and the instant we realized that Kylo Ren has switched sides, and I was just like, yes, this is amazing. And the music is slow motion. They're both turning to fight back to back. That shot, I think I read recently, was Rian Johnson's favorite shot that he wanted to do.
Oh yeah.
And they pulled it off. I mean, I think that connection we had leading up to that really built that scene for me. And I was like, this is so awesome. Then back to back, he's turned, they're going to fight together. And then once that incredible fight scene went through, he instantly turned sides and said, join me. And right there, I was like, whoa, what is this? What's going on? So, I mean, in general, I think their connection as characters, and then just that growth of them moving forward in their respective roles was really great.
I'm going to actually, if that's okay, jump in. This is my number 4 as well, Cory. Yeah, so I'm going to jump in and continue the conversation, because this is where all of you get to say, Tom, just stick to the news, will you? Because this is where Dan, you and I talk about this quite a bit.
Yes. The
balance of the Force. And I think even though that terminology may not be used a lot in this film, I feel like this is where either it's redefined or maybe it's being defined of what the balance is. Because I don't know, to me, there was a moment where I thought we were there. That moment where the lightsaber slices through Snoke, and the two of them, Cory, you just beautifully described that scene where they go back to back and they're taking on those Praetorian guards. I was like, this is it. This is the second movie. What's going on here? I can't believe it. And it was such an awesome scene. Oh my gosh. I mean, I put this up here at the lightsaber battles of all time.
Oh yeah.
And then and Cory, you just mentioned the moment after the battle's over and they look at each other and they have that exchange of words. And I thought this is where, and again, Cory, I'm going to go back to what you said. You said they learned a lot from each other in this film, which I thought was really powerful as well. And I love seeing the Force used that way, where they could communicate with one another. But when he turns and says to her, he uses the famous line, "Join me," and I had the exact same and her response was so great. She's like, "Don't even go there. Why did you do that?" I mean, I don't remember exactly what she says, but it's along that lines. And I was like, the balance then went, then it just sort of they fell back to their sides, and it was just, I thought that was such a great moment. And they were so close to that balance. And I'm still not convinced that we're not going to see a balance at some point, but that was my number 4 point.
Well, okay, so the first thing is thanks a lot. Now I have to find a new newsman. That was really good. What are you guys doing to me?
I think Jeff McGee's available if you're not.
That's right. Real quickly, before we go to Aaron's fourth, just yes or no, if you thought that Rey and or Kylo was going to turn. Cory? Yes or no?
Yes, I thought Kylo Ren was going to turn. Yes.
Tom?
Yes, same thing. Kylo Ren.
Kylo or Rey. Yeah. Aaron?
Absolutely, yes.
Matt?
Absolutely not. I didn't think Kylo Ren was going to turn for a second. I didn't think Rey was going to turn for a second either.
Randy?
I thought Kylo was going to turn.
And I did not think either of them were going to for 1 second either. That was all part of the manipulation. Interesting. Wow, that's cool. We're almost split. Aaron, what's your number 4?
Well, my number 4 actually was the Phasma discussion we had earlier. So I'll go ahead and jump into my next one here, which,
feel free to do Phasma if you want to, because I'm sure you have new points as well. I'm totally up to you, of course.
Oh no, I definitely, we hit every point I had to say through the discussion, and it was worded beautifully. One thing I wanted to touch on too was, it was hit on just a few moments ago through the Luke discussion, was the Force projection of him still being back on Achu and being on Crate, the red planet. So that whole projection scene, I mean, that was absolutely mind-blowing for somebody who had been, as Ray pointed out, so disconnected from the Force for so long. He shut himself off, and she called him on it. He had obviously been shut off from the Force for a while. To be able to come back that strong, it just shows how much growth Luke has had in the time that we had not seen him between Return of the Jedi and now. And it definitely expanded the whole presence of the Force, and then the strength and the potential of the Force. I mean, we did get a glimpse of the projection in Rebels with Yoda showing up on Lothal in the temple when he was on Dagobah. But this really took it to a different level. I mean, we had fighting, we had the interactions. I mean, this was just, to me, that made the movie at this point. I loved this scene and that projection. And when you finally realize that it is that projection, he's really not there. It just really is that mind-blowing moment where it's like, how could, to me, it was just mind blowing, and left me. That was the part that left me the most speechless throughout the movie was that scene, and it to me was definitely one of the better scenes in the movie. Was the idea of that Force projection. Whether or not we'll see that going forward or not, I don't know, but definitely it's something I'd like to see more of.
Matt, where are you at for your number 4?
Well, I suppose I could be all serious and everything, but you know what? Are we just going to let the fact that Viv from The Young Ones was in The Last Jedi go by without any mention whatsoever? Seriously? Adrian Edmondson. He was in The Force. He was in The Last Jedi. It's confirmed. I mean, even Ryan Johnson tweeted a picture of it. It was great. He's an officer who's helping General Hux. And I love this because, he plays, this is Viv, and, The Young Ones was this awesome British comedy from the early 80s that it molded my life. And I was sitting in the theater, I went, oh my God, it's Viv. And at every point I was watching him and I was just waiting for him to kind of look at the screen and go, Rick. And it was awesome. So that was my big point. It's a minor one for a lot of people, but if you know The Young Ones, you're rolling on the floor right now and thinking, I got to go back to see this now. So because you'll see him.
Actually, I'm thinking I'm going to have to go YouTube The Young Ones.
Yeah, I just had to Google that. So
just now, it's still not right.
These guys are the young
guys
ones.
Are just a bunch of uncultured heathen.
More we have to work on them. Randy, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is it's the humor in this in the whole film, and I felt like nobody. You were talking about how nobody was safe as far as anybody could die. Like there's nobody safe as far as living through this film, but I felt nobody was safe, including us as the audience. Starting from the very beginning, like with General Hux and Poe Dameron, just that Ryan Johnson was willing to poke fun at a very intense character, and that the General Hux was, and the actor, I forget his name, that plays General Hux, but that he's willing to deliver these lines, even though because he's been kind of called out as a drama queen, bow to the First Order, and the death of the Republic, and how he kind of has been accused of overacting that moment. And here he is in the opening scene of The Last Jedi, talking about, and we'll make quick work of your X-Wing. Yes, I'm holding for General Hux, please. Hux, Hux, yes. Yeah. That whole thing, we as an audience were the brunt of the biggest joke in my mind is that all of us spent 2 years talking about what is the first thing that Luke's going to say to Rey or Rey's going to say to Luke, and all we get is this lightsaber flip over his shoulder, and he walks away, and the joke's on us, and all the way through the movie. Yoda, the jokes on the books or the jokes on Luke, all the way through the movie, there was an element of humor. Like we've always seen some humor, but it has never been this far forward and on the nose or forward in the dialogue. And I just thought it was hilarious. I love those jokes that and that opening sequence and the humor there between Hux and Poe. I was shocked, but thought it was very funny. Mm-hmm. But I was very shocked when he threw that lightsaber over his shoulder.
I agree.
Because
it was perfect,
and I thought,
really.
Yeah, and I thought that was the only response that would have any words. Would have been. I mean, they've already taken such scrutiny, from not saying a word, just flipping it over his shoulder. But any line would have been, after 2 years, any line would not have been. It's impossible to.
Nothing could live up to that.
No. So,
what if he would have said "What's up," like the old 70s?
Yeah. Or break into the robot, or I don't know. There's nothing that he could have done, including what he did, that would have satisfied us.
Or because he could have said, "I know how to spell dead," and everyone would.
Even Ryan Johnson,
EAD.
even he's not that smart and that courageous to put a line like that in a movie. But yeah, I thought the humor and throughout the whole thing was just, and everybody was a victim, whether it was Hux or us or Luke or Yoda or or Phasma or whoever.
How about when Luke and Rey have their first lesson and he uses that blade of grass? Do you feel that? That's
Yes.
To me, that was the funniest line.
Ooh,
I love that part.
I guess that's what I'm saying, is that there was nobody safe to be poked fun at, and I thought that was really cool throughout the whole movie.
Which is why it's so masterful, and I do think this is something of a masterpiece, because it has those light, humorous moments, and every single funny moment it does advance the characters. There's no cheap laughs just to make you laugh. They all tie into what we understand about these characters and helps us to relate to them more. But it also is heavy too, which I think is brilliant. But my number 4 is Rey's cave vision. When I've seen the movie 4 times now, and that scene it's just so rich. It's incredibly rich. And here is what I think is going on here. I think the fact that you could easily be an infinite number of Reys lined up, but they aren't. She even says to Kylo Ren, or to Ben, she refers to him as Ben Solo for this part, but she says, I should have been scared, but I wasn't, because she sees that there is an end to this journey. There is an end, because this is where, as we saw earlier, that's the dark side of the Force. Yeah, I can't believe you didn't try to resist that, Rey. What are you doing? Her dark side is way different from Kylo Ren's dark side. Kylo Ren's dark side is genocide. Rey's dark side is thinking that she is not worth anything. That's her dark side. Her self-doubt, her struggle to find her identity through her parents, who apparently had abandoned her and are dead. Although I don't, when by the way, when Kylo Ren says that, he does look away. He doesn't look her in the eye when he says that, which is what liars do. But we'll see what happens. But so she finally gets to it, and you keep thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to see her parents. We're going to see her parents. And then the mist clears, and she sees herself. She sees her reflection, and she realizes, I don't need to form my identity through my parents who abandoned me. I am enough. It's okay for me to be me. I don't need to be defined through my parents. And then when she snaps, it's always completely, perfectly in tune, because she gets that there's a rhythm, there's a pattern to her life, and she finds purpose.
That's interesting, because I struggled with that scene in itself, because I was waiting for a Luke in the tree moment where he would kind of come to grips of what he's been battling, his father, blah, 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 and that news. And I was waiting for that moment for them to cement her parents to us as viewers, and we didn't get it. It was more deeply for that character, I think. And I kind of struggled with that. I think I wanted more as a fan, but I was given maybe so much more just for her character. And she seemed stronger to resist the dark side too. I mean, like you said, it wasn't a big scary thing to her. She was comfortable. She's waiting. She's patient, and it was different for her than it was for Luke.
Yeah, much. Which is nice to see that the dark side of the Force doesn't always mean you're going to become the Emperor. Sometimes it's we are our own worst critic, and that's that conflict, that man versus self conflict, or woman versus self conflict. I think it's great. So let's go to the top. Cory, we are on our 5th one, and obviously we can do some honorable mentions, and because the show is running long and it's getting very late, and I want to be cognizant of that. But let's go ahead and do the last one on our list. Cory, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I've got an open document here. I've been kind of scrolling through. I've got a list of, my top list of films and stuff, and these top 5 moments, and kind of debating what to talk about next, and kind of filling the gaps, and kept deleting my last one and kind of moving things around. And I think for my last one, I'm going to say the impact of this film for the saga itself. The more I talk about it with folks, some friends at work, you guys, just my family, my kids, there is so much going on here with this film. And as much as I, as a fan, reacted to it, maybe in a negative way, because it wasn't the episode I wanted it to be, was something more. There's so much more here that I'm still thinking about it. I'm still trying to make my mind up on certain things and wrestling with ramifications of what we all discovered. And then, reading, online and reviews and people's reactions and just debating with myself, there's so much here that is going to be telling stories for years to come. In as much as folks return to Empire Strikes Back and it being such a great story and such an impactful film, I want to say this is the Empire Strikes Back of this generation in a sense. I mean, maybe we haven't fully got there yet because we're a different generation. We're a digital age, and for me to just wrestle with that, but having these conversations helping work things out, and I'm good to know you guys because I don't want to be alone myself, just thinking about this and trying to figure this stuff out. But I think it's cool because, like you said, but that's why we have the podcast to discuss the bigger impacts this film has or will have for the foreseeable future. A lot of things we brought up are a lot of things that are really going to ingest a lot of power and things into some of these characters, these new characters, and then wiping away the past in a sense and starting fresh. And it's something we need even in our own lives. We step back and we have to reevaluate as the new year comes and kind of look at the past and move ahead, and we can never stop that. And so I think that this is kind of a gut check for us as fans, and I'm slowly learning that, and it's
this is cool.
Well, it is. It's
I had no idea that you felt this way. Were you waiting until the show?
I think I was holding back in a sense. After seeing the film, it was so impactful to me. I couldn't make up my mind on a lot of things. People were asking me questions, what do you think? And I couldn't obviously want to give very spoilers, but I didn't know what to say. I don't want to say I didn't like it, but I also didn't want to say I loved it because it was just in that gray area for me and for a long time. And I think that, having these conversations and talking, it's great. I think that's what the film is supposed to do. What film in general should do, regardless of a Star Wars film. It's an art. It's a conversation piece. It's a cultural shift. And we don't have enough of that in film. We have sequels and spin-offs and a lot of things. And this is like, hey, we can do this again in Star Wars. We can take some risks and, bite into some of these characters and come away with a great, impactful message. And doing that this day and age is something that's a big feat, I think, for the folks involved in making this film.
Wow.
A lot of great food. No, a lot of great food for thought. We seriously, we have topics for the next 2 years easily.
Yeah.
Just everything that all of you have been saying, just really, it's just wonderful to think about this stuff. And you're all giving me amazing perspective. Aaron, go ahead and give us, I know you said that you sort of gave your last one, but is there one you want to add in for your little honorable mention or whatever?
Yeah, the last thing I do want to say, and go looking at this movie, The Last Jedi, is my hat's off to Rian Johnson. He stepped into some big shoes and he made them even bigger. And I don't envy J.J. Abrams having to step back into these shoes for the next episode. Johnson took a lot of risks. He made this something that everybody took what everybody was looking forward to and made it something even more than we could imagine. And I have to just take my hat off to him and raise my cup of coffee to him, because he set a bar that is going to be hard to meet or exceed again. So bravo.
Matt, your last one.
It's the art of the storytelling. This film was an unparalleled story from beginning to end. And of course, at 2.5 hours, it had to be, but that's what struck me the most about seeing this movie. And that's what still lingers with me, is the fact that it was a well-wrought story. And it was told in a way that was unlike any other Star Wars film previously, yet at its core was probably the most Star Warsy of all the Star Wars films.
I know what you mean. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I loved how it was not what we were expecting.
It felt like war. Is that what you're saying? It really felt like war.
It really did. I mean, there was That's going to sound kind of odd, but it was very realistic for space fantasy.
True.
It's what we would have thought of, as it being, as sort of this chase and pursuit film, and the sense of desperation and hopelessness. Yet, despite all odds, there was hope and desire to dig themselves out of this hole. Now, but here's the thing: are they going to be able to do so? I mean, it's one thing to have a kid who's got some force sensitivity on Canto Bight, move a broom, and wear the old symbol of the rebellion. But is there enough political capital? Is there enough monetary capital left for the remnants of the resistance to reform? And I genuinely don't know. So I'm really intrigued to see what J.J. Abrams and his team is going to come up with for Episode 9, because it's. Episode 7 ended, and we knew where we were going to start. With Episode 8, Episode 9. We could go anywhere. Who knows? Is there going to be a 3-year time gap? Is it going to be instantaneous? This is what happened 30 minutes ago, and here we are cruising through hyperspace in the Falcon, going, well, where do we go? Well, I don't know. Who do you know? I don't know. Nobody's returning my phone calls. Oh, by the way, where's the general? So it's vexing and it's challenging, but this film is so ultimately rewarding, and I'm so pleased by that.
I agree. Structurally, it's very unorthodox and is really so sharp and so smart. In many ways, we are as kept off balance as the characters are, which again, I think there's so much meta commentary about this film. Randy, what's your last one?
Well, I'm going to end mine with a story of it's unique to my experience. When I went to see The Force Awakens for the first time, it was me, my family, and I don't know, 20 or 30 people that they're all my friends, and they wanted to watch me watch the movie, because when Han Solo died, everyone, it was like 2 rows, maybe 2.5 rows of people go, they all turn and look at me like, oh, what's Randy thinking now? And so I told all my friends, hey, let's all go together and make it a big thing. And what ended up happening was, just by circumstance, my in-laws and my wife ended up like 3-4 rows away, and I didn't get to see with my whole family. And it was cool that we were all together, but it was a bummer because I was with my son and my daughter, but my wife was kind of down with her parents somewhere else. And so for Rogue One, I learned my lesson, and it was just the 4 of us, and we went together and we saw it together, and that was really cool. But I want to share a moment with you, and we did the same thing this year. My kids know I love Yoda. That started my whole collecting, is like somebody gave me a Yoda, and that started me collecting Yodas. But during the movie, my son, it's a long movie, so my son he had to get up and go to the bathroom. So my wife decided, well, I'll go too. So they went to the restroom, and I had to go as well. And I'm sure that many people have the same story, but there's no way I'm leaving. I'll pee my pants before I leave this theater. So I'm sitting there, I'm watching the movie, and this is the first time, and Yoda pops up on the screen, and at first I'm like, oh no, they're not here to see that. But let me tell you what happens, guys, is they come down the hallway and they come around the corner, and Yoda is on the screen, and I see their faces, and I see them look at me, and then their faces are lit up. If we were all facing the screen, we wouldn't really have gotten, but I got to see my son, first of all, to experience it with my family, experience it with my son specifically, because he and I are such Star Wars fans, but to see their facial expressions when they come in and they notice and they see Yoda is on the screen and he's talking, and to see their facial expressions was priceless. And every time I see that scene, I'm going to think of my son, and I'm going to think of his reaction in that moment. And I'll see a million Star Wars movie, or, I'll watch Star Wars 500 times, and I'll see this movie 500 times. But every time I see that scene, it's going to instantly bring me back to that moment where he saw Yoda on the screen, and then he looked at me, and I looked at him, Yoda. And it was such a special moment for me. And it's a time capsule that every time I see that moment, whether I'm watching on my phone or at the office or wherever, I'm going to come to that moment. I'm going to remember that moment, that memory that we had together. And it's about family, and that's what Star Wars is all about.
Wow. Well, that's a tough one to follow, because that's one of the things that's so great about these movies anyway, is that you have those moments, those snapshot moments. My last point is not knowing about Rey and Snoke and how pleased I am with that. I know there's a lot of kerfuffleness about that, but to me, I don't need the payoff now. This is the second film in a trilogy. Think about the other movies, the Star Wars films. We were told that Darth Vader was the father of Luke, but we didn't have confirmation from Yoda for 3 years. We knew that Darth Vader, that Anakin was going to become Darth Vader, but we had to wait, 6 years for that. Not 6 years. We had to wait, from 1999 to, I guess so, to find out how he actually turns. To get the payoff right away, then what else is there? I think, and it sounds judgmental, and I don't want it to be, but I feel like we're just very, in this digital fast food age that we are in, we want it now. We want to find out now so we can move on to the next thing, because it's fast, quick. But I like that we have to marinate, and I like that we have to wait 2 more years. And I mean this with all my heart. If I never find out who Rey's parents are, I'm okay with that. It doesn't really matter. I'm enjoying Rey so much. She's just incredibly cool and very fascinating. And I don't know. I mean, we probably will find out, but it doesn't matter to me. As far as Snoke, I've never liked Snoke. I think he's a pretender to the Emperor, and yes, he's powerful, but it didn't bother me that he's already gone, because really this is not his story. This is Kylo Ren's story. And when the Emperor came out in 1983, he didn't really mean too much to too many people. I think we're having revisionist history there, because we didn't find out how cool and how calculating and amazing that character is until 1999. So that was a very, very long wait. So, wait, 2 years to find out about Snoke. I'm sure they'll cover him in great detail. Maybe that's what the next animated series will be about. I'm not sure, but I was very happy with the not knowing. We are in an interesting spot because we've been talking for a very long time, almost 2 hours, and we haven't addressed any of the criticism of the film or anything that we think is critical. So maybe addressing the criticism might be for another time or for our own shows. But let's just really quickly go down the line before we sign off and say one thing that we did not like as well, or that did not resonate with us about the film. Cory, why don't you start?
Sure. It's something none of us really mentioned a whole lot, but the Canto Bite piece was interesting because, it gave backstory to some pieces of what's going on in the galaxy as a whole. Because we're so centered on some of these main characters and what they're going to do next, and we can tend to forget what goes on around them and the universe they live in. And this is one kind of step out of that main storyline, and saying, "Hey, here's what's kind of going on other places." That was kind of one of the things that wasn't as tight as I would have liked it to be. Although I did appreciate it, I did think it was kind of a little bit silly. I think, in all, the production was done really well. The characters were fun to see on the screen and whatnot. This lavish casino of sorts, and I don't know. It didn't hit me so impactfully, like maybe it will in a few weeks as I think about it or talk about it. But that was maybe the small little piece that I didn't come away with such fervor about.
Tom, what about you?
Oh, well, this is just critique and not criticism here. And it's on the filmmaking side of it. There were two times in the movie where the suture was broken between me and the film. And that was all based on some of the CGI aspect of it. When they were flying on the speeders, and we were having conversation with the windows open and no hair blowing, no wind in the microphones. That was a little that kind of pulled me out of the film just briefly. It didn't bother me, but it was noticeable. And also in the Canto Bight scene where they're riding and I forget the name of the creatures through. Yes, when they're riding the creatures through the town and crashing through walls and things like that, I was a little pulled out of the movie there as well by the computer generated effects. But again, just critique, not criticism by any means. It didn't ruin the movie for me by any means.
No, I think, and I should have said this at the start of the show, I think this is good because we should be critical thinkers. We should be intellectually honest, and we are. So I think that's good. I agree. The part when Poe is sliding into the trench, I thought that was very CGI, and I thought, wow. Usually for a Star Wars film, at least, especially in this day and age, they're able to make that a little bit crisper. But yeah, I see that totally. Aaron, what about you?
No chopper. No, just kidding. Probably the one my biggest, and it's not really a something I disliked or because I did enjoy the movie. The one concern I have based on the movie is my concern of where they're going to go now for the next film with Carrie Fisher, because they've, in my opinion, they've kind of put themselves in a corner where she's on the Falcon. They've left. She's alive, and there's going to have to be some type of closure almost immediately at the opening of the next film, and being the way things played out, and I love the fact they did not change anything that was shot for this movie after she passed. Because this is by far, I would have to say, one of her greatest performances as Leia. But it leaves me with the concern of how it's going to be handled from here. But other than that, that's the only thing that I have a remotely any kind of issue with. I absolutely enjoyed the movie.
Matt, what about you?
I thought the extended rap battle between Snoke and Rey was a little bit off-putting.
But at least Eminem made a cameo. That was neat.
No, my only criticism, and it's very minor, is that I was taken out of the film a couple of times during the Canto Bight scenes by some of the aliens. I thought they were just a little bit too over the top in terms of their design. Some of them I thought worked really well. I especially enjoyed the one where Joseph Gordon-Levitt played was it Slow L, the guy who was complaining about Rose and Fenn parking in the speeder on the beach. That was a nice little cameo. But some of the aliens, it was just a little like, what? No. There's no way that sort of xenobiology could even exist. But then again, of course, then I have to tell myself, remember, it's a movie, it's space fantasy, so you can do this sort of thing. So I've always thought there was something granular, gritty, and even slightly realistic, when it came to the different species from the original trilogy and even into the prequel trilogy. Just some of the species in the sequel trilogy they just haven't really quite done it for me, and this was something that continued in The Last Jedi.
I agree. I always have a few aliens like that in every film that I feel like, that's too much. I totally agree. Randy, what about you?
I was hoping I have a couple little tiny things and then one big one, but little tiny things. I was wishing at the end of the credits that there was a little something like in memory of Carrie Fisher or something cool like that. I waited through all the credits.
There was.
Yeah, there was.
Really? Yeah, almost right away in the credits they do it.
Really? Oh, yeah. Man, I missed it. Well,
it's in big
looks like
font,
I gotta
too.
Shoot, I got to go see it again now. Darn. So that's cool. Okay, problem solved.
You're welcome.
And then the other thing is just a subtle kind of like a little bit of agenda with like kind of like the animal cruelty kind of little tiny bit of a soapbox there, like with the fob ears and stuff, and okay, that's fine, but it did take me out of it a bit. But here's the thing, because I've taken a friend to see it a second time, and I'm embarrassed by this moment that's about to come. The milking scene. I thought it was completely unnecessary. Here's the deal: if the scene cuts from them walking to him hurling himself across, or like pole vaulting himself across that ravine, getting the fish, and then next cut he's walking the fish up the. Now he looks like this survivor kind of. He's made his way here on this island, on this planet, but I don't Dynasty. I don't understand I get you take risks, but leave something on the cutting room floor, and that should have been it, in my opinion, because it didn't. I don't understand what it accomplished. It was, and it didn't fly. That creature didn't look real, and it looked fake. And he looks up, and he tried. I can see Mark Hamill trying to sell it, but what is he saying when he looks up at her? What is he saying?
This is where I get the multicolored milk.
This is where I get the milk, and
It's in the visual guide, in the guide that Pablo wrote, it says it's green milk, which looks like it was blue.
It's green, yeah.
I with a friend sitting next to me, I cringe. I'm like, this is kind of stupid. Sorry, because it's my idea to bring him, and then
I feel like I had to apologize too when I'm with him. I'm like, okay, this part's really weird.
This is dumb.
Yeah, but I think it kind of talks about how Luke has gone nuts a little bit. He's gone crazy. Where I think back to Yoda digging through Luke's bag.
Well, what is he supposed to? We can't go to Casey's.
No, but I'm saying like it shows that Luke's lost a little bit. He's in exile. He doesn't have any contact with anybody, and he has to survive somehow, some way. And this is how he does it. And so I don't know. I like that. That was a nice little
intolerant. Is that what's going on here?
He's also, but the thing about Luke is miffed, though, because Luke is upset that Rey is on his island.
He's trying to discuss her.
Luke has cut himself off from the galaxy. He didn't want any visitors.
Mm-hmm.
She shows up unbidden.
My point is,
I think a lot of that was just sort of, just kind of, being spiteful, and trying just to gross her out. But I do agree with what you're saying, though, because it did take me out of, that was just kind of like, what? So,
I mean, if he goes under and he milks an animal. And that's something that we understand, as you go under a cow, you milk it and whatever. But to like press it and like to see the nipple, I mean, and
let's go to the other part.
Okay, all right. Let me posit this. What if it were a moof? Then would it have been okay?
That's what I kind of expected it to be. Yeah.
As long as the moof wasn't sitting upright, and I don't know. I'm milking this, guys. I'm sorry.
There you go. Very nice. Excellent. Yeah, well, I'll move along, and mine thing that I've never liked about this is Canto Bite. Anything with Canto Bite, it could have been 5 to 7 minutes tops. It was way too long. The character of DJ, I felt like, was more of a let's showcase we have this Oscar-winning master in Benicio del Toro. And I mean, it was a little didactic at points too. I was talking with one of the theater managers, and he said he had to leave the theater. He had to leave the screen, the theater itself, because he thought they were too preachy about animal rights. And I thought, well, okay, that's fine. But it's just, I thought it was way too long. I mean, this film is long. It's too long. I mean, there's plenty that could have been trimmed, and now we know that there's a whole bunch of deleted scenes in the original cut. It was around 3 hours long. I think the narrative is so tight with Luke and Rey and Kylo, and they could have done that, and they probably could have trimmed out a lot of stuff with the rebellion, the burgeoning rebellion as well. And I think that would have made it a little bit cleaner, and I think it would have made people a little more at peace with it. That's really it. Does anybody have any super incredible pressing things you want to say that we haven't talked about? Because I feel really good about this. I while we're having these conversations, I've been talking with each of you on our chats and on text, and my goodness, this was therapeutic. It was enlightening. Yeah. It was entertaining. It was educational. I am so fortunate that I get to be in the CWK family with all of you, because I learn from each of you, and I respect you all so much. So thank you for giving me a more perspective on this film.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that pops out to me is, as far as overall, I mean, like a couple nitpicks here and there. I mean, I had some honorable mentions. I think the original hollow of Leia's original message, which was really nice callback. I think they could have used R2 a little more in the film. The new characters we talked about, Rose, DJ, Haldo. I really liked Lieutenant Connix, Carrie's daughter's character.
Yeah, she was cool.
She did a good job. And then I think one of the guys mentioned that no one was safe. I like that aspect of feeling of anything can happen.
I love Holdo. I thought she was a powerhouse. I thought she was fantastic, and Laura Dern was tremendous.
I have a question about just the ending.
Mm-hmm.
They're back to, and I'm not looking for an answer. It's just, I guess, maybe a hypothetical question. They're back to a band of rebels.
Mm-hmm.
They're so small that they're going to have to kind of use the same mentality that they used before. Quick hits, small groups of people, and so they're small enough to do that. If in the next movie, if they're able to do that and succeed, will anybody even care? Because what Canto Bight showed us is that the galaxy is still moving around and spinning, and regardless of war or not war. I mean,
that's just one part of it, though.
Yeah, I guess what I'm
that's
saying,
the 1%ers.
Yeah, is this so small? Is this band of brothers or band of resistance or rebels so small that even if they win, will anybody care? Because everyone's been killed. I mean, the Senate's all completely consumed by Starkiller Base, and I'm wondering. So there's a lot of questions, and I'm not looking for answers. I think they're great questions that kind of leave out there.
It would have been nice to also get a chance to say goodbye to Akbar too, and say, "Oh, by the way."
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I loved the Amilyn Holdo character, and I loved how she took out the supremacy, even though in fact it didn't. She didn't really take the supremacy out because it was still functional enough to land a force onto Crate.
Yes.
But I do think Admiral Akbar, should have been given a more proper death scene, other than the fact that he was just on the bridge when it was blown up and sucked out into the vacuum of space. So,
right.
But one thing pitching forward on this, I think despite how small the band, the members of the Resistance are now, this is the turning point, I think, where the Resistance now becomes the new rebellion.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that. Okay. Guys, thank you again so much. Please let everyone know where they can find you and give us some plugs about what's going on with your shows.
Sure, I'll
Randy,
start.
Let's start with you. Yeah, okay, Cory, you start.
Sure. It's find me on Twitter, Facebook, all those good places. Although I've kind of taken a break on Facebook as well, just still getting back groove since we've seen the film. But you can send an email to me at coryc@coffeewithkenobi.com and reach out. Yeah, feel free to ask questions or post theories, and I'd like to check them out.
And we lost Tom. We'll hopefully get him back, but you can find Tom on Twitter, of course, as well, and you hear him every week as our newsman on Coffee with Kenobi. Aaron, what about you?
Well, of course, you can always look me up on Twitter. It's usually the best way. You hit me up on my personal Twitter or on the Rebels Reactions Twitter. Looking forward to, after the new year, to pick up where season 4 left off and see how they end the show. So we'll see everybody real soon.
And Matt, what about you, sir?
You can find my personal musings on the Twitters at Gorilla Scribe, and that's with 2 R's and 2 L's, the way it should be spelled. Of course, you can find my Star Wars related musings at Comics with Kenobi, and that's WTH, no I, because of space considerations. And of course, you can also find us at facebook.com/comicswithkenobi with an I. And then, of course, my comic reviews are on coffeewithkenobi.com. And the podcast that Jeff McGee and I do together has now gone weekly. So, you can find that pretty much every Tuesday now.
Which is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're having fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can tell, and plus, this is why I like having all of us in this family, because I feel like everybody makes you laugh and makes you think. And I think that's really cool. Randy, what about you?
Oh, well, you can catch us on Legends Library. We're a podcast dedicated to the Legends line of Star Wars books. Luke and I are talking Annihilation, written by Drew Karpyshyn. It's the sequel to Revan. So we'll be talking about that this month, and we will have a guest join us. His name is Alex Damon from Star Wars Explained. He's been on our show a couple times and really is knowledgeable when it comes to Star Wars and Star Wars Legends. And so be sure to check us out on Legends Library. You can get a hold of us at Legends Library at coffeewithkenobi.com if you want to email us.
Well, thank you all again so much, and thank you to each and every one of you for listening to and supporting Coffee with Kenobi. We are just getting started breaking down and dissecting The Last Jedi. There's going to be so much to go over, and please let us know your thoughts, comments, questions, and opinions. We've got a couple of MP3s we'd like to share with you, and one is from Jeff McGee, of course, of Comics with Kenobi. One is from Dr. Andrea Letamendi of Lattes with Leia. And then we've got some sent in by Din. Enjoy these. We will see you next week with more Star Wars talk. This is the podcast you're looking for.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
Hello, friends. This is Drea with the show Lattes with Leia, and I'm so bummed that I can't be there to have this conversation with you and to hear your reactions and to hear if my reactions make any sense. But I'm so happy that I can contribute some of my thoughts about The Last Jedi. I actually walked away from this film with some really great thoughts, mostly positive. I felt that this film was a good middle film. And I mean that in the sense that, yes, this is the second in a trilogy, but also that it turned the Star Wars script on its side. It allows us or invites us to live with some uncertainty and discomfort. It doesn't tell us what's good and bad necessarily. It has us kind of live in this gray area. And I think that confusion and uncertainty can be good for us. I think it sparks thoughtfulness. I think it sparks innovation when it comes to this universe. Honestly, I think that it allows us to have some interesting conversations. Yes, it's unexpected. Yes, some of it doesn't sit right with us, but I think there's some intentionality around that. And from a psychological perspective, I think that can be something worthwhile, something valuable. And the moment I think that really solidifies this for me is when Kylo Ren explains his plan to Rey. They've just killed Snoke, and he's inviting her to kind of burn everything down. And for a moment there, I'm thinking, that doesn't sound like a bad plan. It's a go. Like, okay. So I'm glad that there was more to it than that, and she refused this invitation. But I think that is kind of where we're supposed to be sitting in the sense of, well, what are we really fighting for? What can we make decisions about that give us a sense of control? And so I love the idea that this film discarded the notion of predeterminism while still championing self-actualization. So in plain English, I mean that, for instance, Rey is from nothing. She's from nobody. And so that doesn't necessarily keep her from following her beliefs about the Force and herself. It's like, so she doesn't have this legendary lineage, but she still finds her own identity to be valuable and valued. And I think that's an important lesson. Finn, of course, isn't supposed to sacrifice himself in that canon. He's rescued by Rose. Kylo kills Snoke, and so does this Darth Vader thing, similar to what Darth Vader does in Return of the Jedi, but Kylo doesn't fully align with Darth Vader's history. he has this moment of redemption, but then slips away into this other world that, again, doesn't sound like a bad plan. Hux is not predetermined to rule the First Order because in the next movie, he becomes my husband, on and on and on. So the fact that there's this abandonment of some of these old Star Wars ideals gives us an intrigue, gives us this thought of discarding some of these old ways. And I know other folks are talking about that. This is not a new idea, but I do appreciate that this is the kind of thing that we're debating about. So I do think that there's some promise here. I don't think it's a bad thing to consider change, to consider this kind of revolution. It's a very different kind of revolution. And it still made me feel like Star Wars was for everybody. I felt that this was a universe that I could be a part of. I felt connected to it emotionally. I felt the loss. I felt celebration. And so I really embraced all of that about this film. I'm okay that it's divisive. I'm okay that it's kind of making us wonder and cringe and argue a little bit. So those are my initial thoughts. I am going to have a much longer conversation with my co-host Amy Ratcliffe on the next episode of Lattes with Leia. Specifically, we are going to talk a little bit more about that kind of light side, dark side component in this film. Certainly about Rey and Kylo's relationship and their development. That amazing scene is burned in my mind where they are fighting together. I think that was one of the best scenes in the film. And then, of course, this idea about lineage and, I don't know, the theories that you have to be from this honorary, legendary family. I don't know. I think that I'm okay with this newer thought that really you could be anyone. And honestly, that's how I saw Star Wars. I felt like Luke was a kid from some random planet. I do feel like this is still essentially the heart of Star Wars, that any of us could be heroic. Any of us could be valued and valuable in this universe. And so we'll talk a lot more about some of the things that we love and hate, and you can hear me ramble on about General Hux.
I got exactly what I was expecting, plus one big thing I wasn't. It didn't change my life, but it felt like Star Wars, and that's all I wanted. That's what I wrote on Facebook after seeing The Force Awakens in 2015. Hey guys, this is Jeff from Comics with Kenobi and Talking Toys with Taylor and Jeff and the Geek Supreme and the Coffee with Kenobi blog page. Sorry that I can't be there with you guys to discuss it tonight. I would like nothing better than to be there talking Star Wars with good people, but alas, it was not to be this time. So I hope that you'll enjoy my ruminations as I present them here. I know there's been a lot of backlash about this film. I understand it to a point because it is not a quote-unquote typical Star Wars film. I understand that the humor has been a bit divisive. I have no problem with the humor. I do think there were probably a couple of times that they could have pulled back from it, but it didn't ruin my enjoyment of it, obviously, because this film, I just loved. It got under my skin in a way that a Star Wars film has never done before. And I think that was because it took time to meditate on characters and themes. It wasn't as concerned with narrative as it was with building characters and exploring these very deep themes that were being presented. I understand a lot of people have had trouble with the humor in it, and I'll be honest, there were a couple of times I thought they could have pulled back from the jokes, but it didn't hamper my enjoyment of the film. This film seems like a companion piece to The Empire Strikes Back in that that film was concerned with relationships. It was concerned with themes, and it was very poetic. This film feels like a tone poem to me more than anything, and that's what makes it so interesting, and that's what makes it, I think, stick with me, and that's what's going to make me go back to this film over and over again. I understand it's a divisive film. I understand that there are people that were disappointed by it, and you know what? That's allowed. We don't have to like everything that comes out of Lucasfilm. I just wish, as fans, we could make room for other viewpoints. We could make room for other voices, because this was a film that was designed to welcome a new generation while challenging the old. And there's nothing wrong with being challenged, and I think we should welcome it. That's my 2 cents. Thank you for allowing me the time to present it, and I now return you to your regularly scheduled roundtable.
Hey, Dan, Tom, and everyone at Coffee with Kenobi. This is Din here with my The Last Jedi reaction. There's so much to say, so I'll do my best to keep this short and sweet. The most important thing about this movie is that it succeeds in fully making sure that Star Wars is going to survive as a myth and not just Star Wars. I wrote a couple of blogs recently to try to work out my thoughts about this wonderful movie, and basically I came to the realization that Star Wars needs to be myth. Myth doesn't need to be Star Wars. And I just read an interview at IO9 with Rian Johnson, and he basically said the same thing, that this needs to be Rey, Finn, and Poe's story. And that you can never have Leia, Luke, and Han solving all the problems for them, or it wouldn't be their story. The most profound thing I could say about the first time I watched this movie, I've seen it 3 times now, is that halfway through, when Luke, when we finally see from Luke's point of view that he's contemplated killing his nephew, Ben, which is something I just at the time thought he would never do, was that I said to myself, I think it might be time for me to let go of Star Wars. This is going to a place I can't deal with. As much as I think this movie is a masterpiece already, by the end of the movie, I realized, wow, this really is a masterpiece. That is the story that needed to be told. I didn't want to see that myth, but I realized by the end, as a middle-aged person myself, who has always looked at Luke Skywalker as his main hero since I was a kid, that this was the myth I didn't want, but that I needed. Anyone who gets to this age in life realizes they have some actual failures and regrets, and we do with it. And like Yoda said, in this movie, if we learn to take those failures and have them turn us into better people, better citizens, people and families, better mentors, whatever it is, then this is a good myth. And this movie really inspired me to do that, to the point where at the end, when Luke finally does his comes back as a Force projection, I cried because I thought it was such a beautiful arc for him. I recently had taken out again from the library Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces, which I tend to read to help with my songwriting lyrics. And I just wanted to see how this movie might fit into that. And wow, almost every symbol and almost every moment from this movie, it's almost like Rian Johnson cross-checked it with this book to the point where Luke at the end really, and this is not me getting religious like Joseph Campbell. This is me understanding the similarities of mythic archetypes. I thought the scene was so beautiful because Luke, he wasn't moving. He was standing and he wasn't moving his feet. There was a lot of close-ups on his feet being on solid ground. And then I read in Hero with 1,000 Faces, like within the first 30, 40 pages, that this is Buddha on the immovable spot where Buddha's just sitting and touching the ground. And he's assailed by the god Love and Death with a massive army who's riding an elephant. And that is exactly Kylo Ren is the god Love and Death on the elephant, which is the massive AT-AT, or well, he's in the ship above the AT-ATs with a massive army. Well, actually, really cool image is that the Buddha touches the ground in that part in his myth, and then Luke evokes that by simply coming out of being shot by the AT-ATs and brushing the dirt, which is the ground, off his shoulder with one hand, which is really cool. The scene also evokes, obviously, the Jesus archetype because he sacrifices himself at that moment. And when you put this together with the fact that he's basically sitting at the tree of life, which is the Buddha sitting at the tree of life, the whole movie on the island, and by the way, the cross that Jesus is crucified on is also the tree. It's wood. You realize that this is a perfect end to our globalized hero's journey of Luke Skywalker, that he ends in a way that is both evocative of Eastern and Western religion, spirituality, and mythology. Just beautiful. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say. I have a few blogs out about that. You can read my blogs at Din's blog on Tumblr or find me on Facebook. It was really hard to lose my childhood hero Luke, but I know he'll be back in some form in the next movie. As he said at the end, no one's ever really gone, that he said to Leia. And this year was tough for me because I lost my other childhood hero, which is a singer I saw when I was 15 years old. The night that I saw him sing, I decided I wanted to be a singer for the rest of my life. I knew what my call to adventure was. So I lost him. We lost him. He's a big singer and star here in Canada. Gord Downie lost him to brain cancer this year. And our band that I sing in, F105, is releasing a song for him called Courage 2, Friday, December 22, which is probably, this episode will probably air after that. So you can go there and you can download it for free as a holiday, Christmas, seasonal gift. And sort of now, it's a celebration of both my heroes this year. Thank you for having me on. I hope everyone loved the movie as much as I do. And remember, it's challenging for a reason. If you give it a chance to try to understand why it's a challenge, you may just love it. Anyways, happy holidays, and thanks again. You can find us at f105music.com or Twitter at F105music or Facebook at F105music or SoundCloud at F105music, and the free download of Courage 2 will be there. May the Force be with you.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along. Move along.
Coffee with Kenobi was also sponsored by the Star Wars digital card trader collecting app from Topps. If you love Star Wars and love the excitement of chasing your favorite Star Wars collectibles, the Star Wars digital card trader collecting app from Topps is for you. Download the free app from iTunes or Google Play and collect your favorite images from the classic 1977 Star Wars cards to the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and now The Last Jedi. Collect and trade with friends new and old through the Star Wars digital card trader collecting app from Topps. These are the cards you're looking for.